Hello, everyone, and happy Halloween. Welcome back to the Star Trek Hit or Miss podcast on this October the 31st. Don't worry, we do have a little bit of Halloween content for you on this day, once I realized the day that it was going to air. But we do have a particularly not Halloween-themed review as well, because I kind of sorted those out in advance and organized my guests. And speaking of which, I am honored to be joined by a man who's I've come to know a little bit, and I have to say I'm privileged to say that. A man who you may know of, who I'm looking forward to discovering a bit more about the Trek habits and fandom of. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Hello, I am Dom. How do I introduce myself? My name, and that's always the difficult bit when it comes to this sort of thing. Do I say my full name? How formal do I want to be? I am Dominic G Martin, aka Who Chaser, aka the Purple Doctor. And just say more and more AKAs after that.
You should, surely to stay on brand, you should have just said this. I am Captain Dominic G Martin of the Starship Enterprise.
If only. I can select which one. Anyone between Discovery's timeline and TNG timeline. One of those is mine.
Fair enough. Awesome.
If I live that long, hopefully I will.
Well, we're all hoping to at least make it to First Contact 2063.
Oh yeah, that's the one.
But, yeah, cool. Yeah, and it's kind of a weird thing, because if you know Dom, you probably are aware of his Doctor Who fandom. He's very active in that kind of thing. But when I was recording a Doctor Who podcast actually a while ago, we got talking about Star Trek at random, and it surprised me how sort of into Star Trek you were, Dom, when we got talking. You obviously knew what you were talking about and mentioned that you were a big fan. And since then, I've seen on Twitter you've been kind of rewatching DS9, and yeah. So as I say, I can't wait to actually get into the weeds about what Star Trek you like and everything, because I'm definitely enjoying what I'm seeing. And as I say, Dom's a little bit excited because he's off to, as we're recording, he's about to head off to Comic-Con, and he's got one of his cosplays as a lovely Star Trek captain's uniform, Next Gen season 1 and 2 era.
Which not many people really do these days, I find.
No.
Most of people will usually do like the main season 3 onwards uniform, or the DS9 uniform. I tend to find, if not classic. But I really love. I have a massive soft spot for the season 1-2 uniform. It always struck me as a bit of a sailor-esque uniform with how the piping is on the top.
Yeah, the way the collar goes as well. It's very very like that. The other one seems a bit stiff. I wouldn't fancy wearing the season 3 onward uniform because the collars are right up your neck.
Hence why poor Patrick Stewart had to keep on pulling it down.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. I'm seeing an awful lot of Lower Decks cosplay, to be honest, at the moment, more than anything else. But yeah, I'm jealous of you getting to go to a convention. Is there any sort of special Star Trek guests you're looking forward to meeting?
I don't think there's any Star Trek guests, unfortunately. I wanted to go to Destination Star Trek, but I don't think I'm going to have the opportunity until next year, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. I really hope to. I know that if I go to London Film and Comic Con, the next LFCC one, the Showmasters one, Andrew Robinson's going to be there. And
cool.
I've had my absolute sights on meeting him because I love Garrick. So
fair enough. Bit of a spoiler for the hit or miss section in there.
Oh dear, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, not at all. Not at all. Don't worry about it. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm the same as you. I would love to go to a Destination Star Trek or a Star Trek specific con someday, but I do feel bad for the people who booked this year because like a ton of guests have dropped out last minute, which isn't good. But never mind.
It's just made it not quite as worth it.
Yeah, I know there was like 2 or 3 Voyager guests that all dropped out at once, and instead of announcing they'd cancelled, they announced them for next year, as if it was like a glass half full situation, which didn't go down very well.
No, I'm not surprised. That's a very dodgy way to handle it. It's just like, okay, so they're not now, but later.
Yeah, exactly. I do feel for them, and a couple of my good friends as well. Well, I say good friends on Trek Twitter and who have been on the podcast were annoyed by that, and I can kind of understand it, but. Anyway, hopefully we can all get to gather together in rooms again properly sometime soon. And as I say, I've never actually been to a specifically Star Trek convention. I've been to Comic Cons, but they were more general. So one day, that's going to be my mission.
Yeah.
Try and slim down enough to get into a Starfleet uniform of some kind and get myself to a con. So awesome.
I believe in you, buddy.
Oh, thank you, man. Awesome. Well, in case this is your first time listening, and for Dom's benefit, in case you haven't heard the previous episodes, the way this podcast works is that it breaks down into sections, basically. The first section essentially is a getting to know you, talking about Star Trek and its relation to your life. The second section is the famed hit or miss section that the podcast is named for, which this week will have a bit of a spooky Halloween theme to try and stay on trend. And then we'll do an episode review, which this week is the Voyager episode, Message in a Bottle, which we had arranged in advance to review. And then we will deal with all of the conclusions and scores and audience interactions and all that at the very end for the last sort of 10, 15 minutes. So if that's all good, then Dom, are you ready to get going?
Oh, yes.
Awesome. And I will kick things off with this first section, which I call Healing Frequencies Open, which is just a geeky way of saying it's like a getting to know you type thing. So if you don't mind, Dom, basically I'm going to grill you about your taste in Star Trek for a little while.
That's quite all right.
So the first question I've been asking all my guests is, what do you remember what it was that introduced you to Star Trek? Which episode sort of first hooked you in and got you to carry on watching? When exactly was it? Can you recall?
My goodness. Okay. Well, I believe I'm trying to remember the name of the episode here, but my earliest memory is of watching Star Trek, the original series, and Devil in the Dark. That's it. The one with the Horta.
Oh,
that
nice.
is the one that had me initially interested, because it was so surreal. Because I was like, well, how old was I at the time? It was being shown on the BBC, so I was quite young. And my mother is a massive fan of TOS, and she decided to introduce me to it. And that episode scared the living daylights out of me because of the design of the Horta.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, it was a case of things that scared me, fascinated me. And this was also the same case with Baylock.
Of course, yeah.
Every time in the end credits, I would always leave the room before we showed up. If it was season 2, it'd be in the end. If it was like season 1 or 3, it'd be a free-for-all. And I was just like, oh, God. It scared the daylights out of me until I just watched the episode a bit more. And then I became more fascinated and learning more about these guys and learning more about those creatures and those monsters. It got me more into it. I mean, this is well before I got into Doctor Who. So one could say that Star Trek is my first sci-fi love properly.
Awesome. I meant to mention that actually up top, so I may as well mention it now. That I was going to give you a little bit of a plug about that because I had mentioned you're kind of on more known around Doctor Who circles and sort of Doctor Who fan works and projects, and I really enjoyed the last series you did, the Doctor Who Remnants. And
thank you.
I just wanted to shout out for any listeners that I've got that it was another thing that reaffirmed you as a bit of a Trekkie as much as a Doctor Who fan, because, and I forget the title now, the Cyberman episode that I listened to toward the start of the series, it had a very Star Trek vibe to it. So I just wanted to let my listeners know that if you're a Star Trek fan that is looking for a way into kind of Doctor Who via fan works, that's a great one to start with, because it's got a very Star Trek feel overall to it. And it was obvious you knew what you were talking about and where you were coming from with that one.
Oh yes, that was a very intentional Star Trek homage, really blending together the how the starship was, because the way the starships work in Star Trek to me is the definitive way of how starships function. In fiction, how I would employ it, really. So that is my favorite way. But yeah, writing that was a lot of fun, because I'd be like, okay, I've designed a whole spaceship. In my mind, it's a Galaxy class, but obviously for copyright reasons and Star Trek, Doctor Who universe reasons, it's not that. But you know what I mean. Yeah.
Well, Doctor Who does have a Galaxy class starship. We just don't know what it looks like, do we? Or it certainly doesn't look like the Enterprise D.
Christmas Carol, you see it. But no, I refuse to acknowledge that, to be honest.
Fair enough. And just so people can find it, what was the title of that episode? I'm so sorry, I forgot.
Oh, Prosperity of the Cybermen.
Prosperity of the Cybermen, and that's Doctor Who Remnants. So yeah, I will leave a link to all of Dom's random projects and stuff, I promise, in the description. But so that's really weird that it was the original series that kind of drew you in. And it was bizarre that you mentioned that, because I was reading about, obviously for Halloween, I was reading about just scary things from Star Trek. What can I potentially put in the hit or miss section? And one of the things I read was another person who had said he was absolutely terrified at the very end of the credits when Baylock appeared. Well, the Baylock puppet, because obviously it's not even real.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
But it's very odd. And I do remember last the last time there was a Star Trek convention a few months ago, somebody won the cosplay competition because they went as the Baylock puppet, but they had a little screen that they held in front of them that said producer Fred Freiberger or whoever it is.
Yeah.
So it looked like that actual
I saw
screen.
a picture of that. That was so creepy. It's because it's so infamous.
Yeah.
You can get away with that.
Yeah,
I love that.
I loved it as well. Awesome. Oh, that's cool. So awesome. And it was quite a cerebral episode that was your first, because I like that Horta kind of, you think it's a villain and it's just protecting its young kind of storyline. So very heavy stuff for a kid, I would have thought. But, cool.
Yeah, I think the more ethical side of things probably went over my head as a child, but as an adult, I and a teenager, I kind of got into them much better.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, that's cool. And so if you had to pick a favorite series out of the ones that have aired so far, what would you say it would be? I know it's a big question.
Okay, I mean, my childhood bias screams TOS and TNG. If I had to pick between the two, it would be TNG. But I do love TOS. But as I've grown up, I do love DS9, and I adore Voyager, which is not many people tend to adore Voyager, but there's something so homely. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. It's something so comforting and homely about Voyager that is just a delight, that you can easily just snap on an episode and just enjoy it. I was watching Shattered the other day from season 5.
Oh, wow.
And
7, I think, Shattered, actually.
7. No, yeah, you're right, 7. And I really just that blend of having that young Janeway and that modern Chakotay, that was very crazy, but I really like that.
Yeah, I like that. That's kind of an ingenious way to do a clip show without doing a clip show.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. That was much better than the time Next Gen did it at the end of its second season, than it was literally just a clip show.
Oh, the one where Riker's having in the operation, isn't it?
Yeah, Riker's in a coma, so he literally is just reliving, and it's just clips from the episodes, and it's like, oh dear me, never mind.
Yeah,
I think it was a writer's strike thing or something, but anyway, never mind. So yeah, the big question then, just to finish off the little intro section, is if you had to pick 3 episodes that you think exemplify the very best of Star Trek, and or that you think would be good for introducing people to Star Trek to sort of fly the flag for the franchise, which 3 episodes would you choose? Or, as it finally occurred to me last week, possibly even movies, since there's over a dozen of those as well.
Yeah, there's loads of movies. Okay, firstly, I will go with City on the Edge of Forever for TOS.
Definitely, yes, thank you. Awesome. That's my absolute number 1 of the franchise. I think I love that.
Oh, it's a beautiful episode. It's just so... Oh, it was my mother's favorite episode. And we've watched it enough times, and we just love it to pieces. Yeah. Oh my goodness! Yeah. It's a marvelous guest starring by Joan Collins, I believe. It's Joan Collins, wasn't it? Yeah. She was wonderful. But yeah, incredible performance from like Shatner and Nimoy in that, and just the story just grabs me so much. It tingles the heartstrings, man.
It does. It gets me every time. I won't spoil it in case anyone hasn't seen it, but it was an episode I always would recommend everyone to watch. It starts off seeming a little bit silly, so just go with the concepts of the random sort of sci-fi ideas for the first sort of few minutes, but then believe me, it gets really good. So yeah. Yeah, cool. Did you ever watch? This is probably way into the weeds, but there was back in 1996, I think, a 30th anniversary Star Trek special where they had like famous guest stars and stuff talking, and one of them was Joan Collins, and she was talking about when she guest starred on Star Trek, obviously, and she said that she took the part of Star Trek because she thought she was going to get to be some glamorous like Queen of the Universe in a skimpy costume or something. And then when she got there, initially she was disappointed because they were like, "You're a woman working in a soup kitchen and fully buttoned up conservative woman." And she was, "Oh, darn it." But she's always said, like, since then, she's really proud of the role. And I always remember that she signed off her sort of her bit of the night by saying, and I'll never forget Star Trek. I'm really proud of it. And so during the 80s and 90s, whenever somebody would walk up to me and go, "Aren't you Alexis Carrington, that bitch from Dynasty?" I would always smile sweetly and say, "No, I'm Edith Keeler, Depression-era social worker from Star Trek."
Oh, so that's really cool. I love that. Oh, she came in expecting Alana Troyes and got that. So
she got Edith Keeler. Much better in my opinion.
Much better. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you. Anyway, you had another 2 episodes or movies to pick.
Yes. Number 2, we'll go with, I'll say The Visitor from DS9.
Oh, another great one. Yeah.
because I adore that one. I mean, just Tony Todd's performance as Jake.
I was going to say just great performances again. Edith and Joan Collins as Edith and Tony Todd as Jake. Great.
Is honestly one of my favorite guest star turns in Star Trek, and just the sheer the emotion in that story. I love the emotional Star Trek episodes, but that one just strikes me as just being one of the top tier DS9 episodes because of just how again, no spoilers, but just the character dynamics between Cisco and his son.
Yes,
is
that's what
beautiful.
I said, because that's another great choice. So I'm curious what your third will be.
My third, there are two TNG episodes that I'm torn between, because one of them is it's one of those one-off concept ideas, and the other is something that has more of a massive impact on the franchise to this day. And you can probably guess which one. So I'll go with the latter because I feel it is of greater importance, and that would be Measure of a Man.
Oh, okay. That wasn't what I was expecting. Okay.
Oh, what were you expecting?
I was expecting Best of Both Worlds when you said impact on the franchise going forward.
Oh, no. I mean, the whole synthetics and androids storyline is still continuing through Picard.
It is. That's true. Yeah.
So my other choice would have been The Inner Light, but again, that's more of a pretty episode. That's less relevant on the franchise as a whole.
Yeah. That's never come up. Measure of a Man and Best of Both Worlds have both come up a couple of times. Nobody's mentioned The Inner Light, and I thought it was madly popular. So it's another I'm pleased you mentioned and gave it its due. So
yeah, I love Inner Light. It's really, really good. But Measure of a Man, just for how it handles androids and obviously data, is just, I find it really fascinating, exemplifying that sort of that society, like how obviously Gene Roddenberry still wanted this idyllic society through TNG, but of course androids being not necessarily would they be seen as human or sentient, etc. I find that really fascinating. It's a very Asimov concept. I mean, there's also now you got me thinking about all the other TNG episodes I really like, because I watched the Drumhead the other day as well. That's really good.
Another great one. Yep.
Yeah. But I'm gonna have to focus and double down on Measure of a Man.
That's fine. Well, you could always mention what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of honourable mentions from the others.
Honourable mentions: Inner Light, Drumhead from DS9. I mean, no, sorry, TNG. God, TNG, had DS9 in my head because I was just about to say Triples and Tribulations.
Trials and Tribulations from DS9.
Yeah, Trials and Tribulations. That's it. That was that was my first introduction to DS9 all those years back, and I was like, "Wow, this is great." Is the rest of the franchise like this? No.
No, that's impressive what they pulled off again in 1996, though, to do that, putting them into that original episode, and it's seamless. It's amazing to watch.
Rebuilding those sets, or were they already built for a fan set or something, or was that In a Mirror Darkly? Because that was a fan set.
In a Mirror Darkly was definitely the fan bridge of the Enterprise. For Trials and Tribulations, they literally just built a corridor. The rest is just them via CGI and stuff in the footage, which is really wow, impressive.
It's seamless.
Yeah. That's great. Well, those are our fantastic choices. But just out of curiosity, for my own sake, then you've mentioned basically the first 4 series are kind of where your heart lies, perhaps. But have you been catching up with any of the more recent ones? Is there anything you're a fan of?
Unfortunately, I've just not had really the chance to catch up on anything past Discovery season 1. So I'm well behind. Lower Decks I've only seen a few episodes of, and Picard I've seen nearly the entire first series, but again, it's just on and off. I'm kind of waiting till there's a bit more of them there so I can just binge watch them, because I'm concentrating on a few other bits and pieces and obviously, I mean, when it comes to instant watching, who is going to be my first port of call? But when there's Trek, it would be mean to say there's less need for me to watch it immediately. But it just feels like that it's there and it's comforting. It's there when I want to see it. And plus, I'm waiting to watch Picard with one of my closest friends who's also a massive Trekkie, and we're going to binge watch it together. We've been promising each other for 2 years. We still haven't done it yet. So I'm just like, we'll get there. But eventually I will lose patience and I will just watch it myself. One of the things that initially did put me off Discovery was how everything looks. And I was just like, no. I know it's like, okay, come on, Dom, you should realize they're going to do modernizations. It's not going to be dragged out of the 60s. But it's just because my brain is just like, that somehow translates into the original aesthetics of the original series, and you got like those small rooms, small screens. Instead, you got all these digital pads. This looks like it belongs more in the Kelvin universe. And I'm just like, how is this Prime, dude?
Well, to be fair, without spoiling it, they are aware of that. So by the end of season 2, going into season 3 of Discovery, they've corrected that issue. Because again, without spoiling, you'll have seen that the bridge of the Enterprise is as close to a perfect modernized recreation of the bridge of the original Enterprise as you can get. As they're launching kind of Strange New Worlds, I think I love it personally because it's not the exact like 1960s day glow kind of thing, which a lot of people kind of I think expect because obviously DS9 and Enterprise did that. But I was just fawning over it when they did the previews and stuff, and even when it appeared in season 2 of Discovery, I was like, "Yep."
Yeah, I did see the bridge. It does look really good. I'm looking forward to Strange New Worlds a lot.
Oh, I'm so excited for that one.
Because I've always loved Pike as a character, even when it was just Menagerie in the Cage. But
then you should definitely watch season 2 of Discovery.
I definitely will.
I was the same because it's so respectful to that character, and Anson Mount is fantastic in the role, and Ethan Peck as Spock as well. Despite having the biggest uphill climb because he's competing against Nimoy and Zachary Quinto at this point.
Yeah, it's not an easy job.
It's not, is it? But anyway, I've got distracted and I could have just been talking all day to you. But regardless, so that was a little bit of a getting to know you anyway. So I'll move the episode along and get into the second section, which is the hit or miss section, which gives the podcast its name. If you're not familiar with the hit or miss from this podcast or our sort of Doctor Who days back in the day, what it is, I basically just throw out random things from anywhere in the Star Trek franchise. Dom doesn't know in advance what they're going to be, and I just basically hurl them at him and ask if he thinks it's a hit or a miss, and some brief reasons why, and then give my own opinions on whether I agree or disagree, and we can debate back and forth if necessary. And yeah, just take it all in from there. And as I mentioned, this week, I've tried to make the hit or miss section a little bit spooky, a little bit Halloween themed. So what it is, I'll ease you into the hit or miss section without anything particularly scary. Number one is something you alluded to earlier, so it's probably not going to take long to get through. And it is the character of Garak, hit or miss.
Hit, massive hit. Such a multi-layered character, such a fantastic performance from Andrew Robinson, who is a brilliant actor. Loved him in Hellraiser as well, which I've seen recently. But Garak himself, I just love the chemistry that he has with Bashir. It is just, it's magnetic. It honestly is magnetic. What was I've forgotten the name of the episode where he has to operate on Garak.
Is it The Wire, maybe?
The Wire, that's it, yeah. Watched that one reasonable time ago, but that one was just peak. That was their relationship, and obviously I heard about how Rick Berman wasn't too keen on how they handled him, which is annoying to me because I really like that. But I thought they still managed to handle him extraordinarily well, and yeah, he's a massive hit to me. Awesome.
Yeah, I see he's very, very popular on Twitter, and not just with the kind of, shipper crowd, which absolutely fair play. The subtext in their scenes rapidly became text. I'm not going to deny that fact. O'Brien was his platonic friend, Garak was his boyfriend. We can pretty much accept that at this point. But but no, in terms of the character, I agree. I think he's a hit because I love the idea that he's like the enemies that just left the station. He's the one of them that's not kind of with them. I'm stumbling over my words here, but you know what I mean? Like, he's not loyal to the bad guys. And I just think it's clever every time they kind of had to think of something to do with him. So I remember being impressed when, at the end of season 5, when the Dominion and the Cardassians take the station back, and Garak ends up on the Defiant just going, well, I'd like to come along if you'd like. I never know if you might need a good tailor, and simply I'd have nowhere else to go. So it's like, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Very much so. Oh, there's also this line that I absolutely adore from him. One of the season 2 episodes or 1 episode, but it's always struck out to me. It's definitive to his character, and it's just like, "You don't trust me, Doctor? There's hope for you yet."
Yes, I love it. That's one of the ones, along with the other line that always appears in the memes, which is, "Doctor, everything I've told you is true, even the lies, especially the lies."
Especially the lies. I love that. He's such a trickster. He's brilliant.
It's awesome. And I liked when they did the whole thing about his secret father in Arbrantane, and like, will he accept him or not? And yeah, he had a whole arc of that around season 3 to 5.
Yeah.
And then again with the Dominion stuff, it was him that kind of liberated Cardassia, which was a beautiful way to bring him back to his people, I guess, as well.
Cap that off, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I think we both like the character, suffice to say.
I definitely.
From the original series, and it's the only time it's really been a very blatant Halloween episode. It's the episode Cat's Paw.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Know that one. Oh, my goodness.
Awesome.
Oh,
hit or miss.
That was years ago. Hit. And awesome. I remember, wasn't there like a giant cat?
Yep.
There? Yeah, that's the one. Oh, my God. That was freaky as a kid. And just the slightly like possessed crew members.
Yes.
That was definitely that was a creepy one, to say the least.
It's really weird. It's one of those, I would probably say hit, but it's only salvaged as a hit when you recognize that it was made to be a Halloween episode. And so all the ridiculousness, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I get what you're doing. A random castle has appeared, and you've got like the Macbeth style 3 witches and the giant cats and everything. And yeah, you've got to give it up for them for at least going all out and having the balls to do it.
Definitely. It was intentional. And I think for the most part, they pulled it off.
Yeah, I would agree. But and again, it's very common in the original series that, the all-powerful thing turns out to be something silly. But I just remember that ending from when I was a kid watching TOS, that they shatter her wand or whatever as keeping their human form, and they're this random little bird things.
Yeah. That was right out of nowhere.
Yeah, completely. But it's just such a visual, though, that you're like, it's ridiculous and it's out of nowhere, but it sticks in your mind that when I just always picture these 2 like purple shiny birds on the floor, like But yeah, awesome.
Oh,
so yeah, a hit for the Halloween episode Cat's Paw then. Awesome.
Yeah.
The next thing I have on my list is a movie, because frankly, it's the thing that I find scariest out of Star Trek, and that's the movie Star Trek First Contact. Hit.
Yes. I love that choice. It's a hit for me. Oh, goodness. I love that one. It's so scary. The Borg are actually at their scariest, because now they've got the big budget behind them to be able to really enhance those prosthetics. Yeah. And how much they can actually do. Oh, man. There's a fair amount of gore in that as well when it comes to the transformations. It's
really gory, yeah. You see like eyes gouged out and things. It's shocking, really. Body horror.
Yeah. Oh, it really sticks with you. But that was scary. Picard's declining mental state was scary, because just how like vengeful he was becoming.
Great performance though by Patrick Stewart. That scene in the ready room is just, in my opinion, if sci-fi got respect, that's an Oscar-worthy performance. That right?
Oh
there.
Yeah, definitely. I just really thought that was. That is definitely my favorite of the next gen movies.
By far, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think not just for the reasons that it's scary, because again, even thinking about crazy ideas like the Borg Queen being just a disembodied head, and you're thinking like, who thought of this? It's so weird.
How do you come up with that? So the Queen herself was just so un-Borg-like. I found that creepier. She was just like, she had her emotions intact, and it's just like, okay, wow, you should not be like this.
She's kind of like, related to what you were saying earlier, she's kind of Cenobite-like in a lot of ways, weirdly. She does seem like a bondage demon kind of thing. It's it's all about seductive nature and everything, rather than being like the robotic cyborg, which is why I have a slight issue with the idea of the Queen, but you've got to give it up for the performance that Alice Krieger did, at least,
Yeah.
Awesome. And great plot overall, the idea of having to make sure that first contact happens and rescue the day. And again, the Borg are always cool, but you're absolutely right. It was good that they finally got the budget to realize them, even if the body horror maybe's got a little tiny bit much
Yeah.
for me, although I was like, 14 at the time, so
Yeah,
couldn't
that's
perhaps
the
have been
thing.
as wimpy.
James Cromwell was Zephyr Cochrane, though. Brilliant.
Yes, yeah. Oh, and the drunk Deanna Troi scene.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Glorious.
Oh, goodness me.
Oh, I love that movie.
Marina played it so well.
She was so much better in the movies than they ever let her be in the show. We just mentioned that last week. Yeah.
A lot more relaxed in the movies. I mean, and in Voyager as well. I mean, when her accent started slipping, it was surprisingly better.
The next thing on my list is something you will be more familiar with, and it's the scary concept of an enemy that wants to conquer you and go to war. So hit or miss the Dominion.
Oh, the Dominion. Oh, my goodness. Now, they were creepy as heck so far. I mean, I'm still midway through season 3 of DS9.
Okay.
Nice. But we're seeing the origins of them, and they are not nice. That whole experimentation, or the mind games they played with the crew in their first appearance, really, first proper appearance, I believe, early season 3, when they were all thought they were on the station, but they were all actually just back in the cave.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Weird. I forget that one. The Search, I think, is.
That's it. Yeah, The Search.
Yeah, it's great because I was reading again as I was reading to sort of like what's scary in Star Trek. Somebody had compared the idea of the changelings to the creature from the Thing, in that you never know if you're one of them or if any of them are around anywhere. And I was like, oh yeah, that's actually a perfect analogy in a lot of ways because it's the paranoia, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Odo, when he's mad, is very scary because there was this one where he was destabilizing and he became that monster. Yeah,
that's the end, towards the end of season 4, I believe. When he, or am I misremembering that?
So it was season 2, I think. Or was it season 3? It was earlier. But yeah,
I'm thinking of something else. But yeah. I'm thinking of the one where he's losing his powers and he's drying out and looks all flaky.
Oh no, that one's terrifying in itself. But this one is this is the one where the professor comes along, who he
yes, the one who kind of found him and named him.
Found him, put him in a jar.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, there's some scary ideas, but I mentioned it in a previous review, but I love the episodes Homefront and Paradise Lost in season 4 for when you reach them, because it's just...
Oh, that's the one where Cisco's in the TNG uniform, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I love that one.
I love it because it just deals with the paranoia of like, yes, there's an actual threat going on here, but the paranoia taking you over and making you militant is almost as bad as the actual threat. You know,
I love that one.
Yeah, it's great. There's all kinds of different representations of fear. And for me, if we're talking about scary stuff and fearful stuff, I think the fear of losing your own morality and your own kind of freedom like that, pretty freaky idea within itself, you know. And,
massive.
Again, it's one of those smaller moments that sticks with me, but it's always been in there, is when they're going through all these security things, and the whole episode is about how they're intensifying the security, and then there is an actual shapeshifter that comes up to Cisco and just says, "What if I told you? I can tell you exactly how many of us there are. There's 3 on your whole planet." And it's just like, oh wow, we're going to all of this trouble, curtailing freedoms and everything, and there's 3 of them. You know what I mean?
3 of them. Oh.
Not that that's not scary within itself, because who knows where
they are. Exactly.
Yeah. But cool, awesome. Yeah, we seem to have a lot in common, but I will mention I've got another few episodes and then one more thing. So the next episode, I've got a feeling you will have seen this one, is the episode Conspiracy from early Next Generation.
Oh, God.
Hit or miss?
Well, that was... they were still finding their feet.
Yes,
they were getting there. Miss. I'm sorry.
No, that's. I would absolutely agree with you. I always tend to put in at least one thing that I think is going to be a miss, and I agree. It's so silly. It's so ridiculous. It's don't get me wrong. It's cool in that gory kind of 80s horror movie kind of special effects way at the end of the episode. But it's so ridiculous, and it goes absolutely nowhere, and it's got nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, nothing's revisited about that episode. It's just, oh, okay. Cool, thank you.
I vaguely remember reading somewhere that there was a concept that those bug things were going to end up to be the Borg, and then that would have tied it all nicely in a bow kind of thing. But yeah, in the end,
I'm glad they didn't pursue that.
Yeah, no, they realized that bugs were too expensive, so cyborgs were cheaper. And that's when they were changed. But you can kind of tell the influence because that's like the whole hive mind, like insects kind of thing.
Yeah,
That's where that
yeah.
came from. So, yeah. But no, that episode is just so weird. If only because it stands out like a sore thumb, like out of nowhere.
It does. We don't need it. We didn't need it. Nah, it's just, and all anybody really remembers about it is that that bug at the end.
Yeah, the guy's head exploding. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's not great. But yeah, as you say, next gen, it took a season or two to find its feet, and that was season 1. So fair play.
Thankfully, it much improved after that. Imagine just accidentally putting everything on random, then getting Conspiracy and then Code of Honor back to back. You'd be done for.
Oh my word. Code of Honor is an episode that's just so bad.
It's just a mistake. I'm surprised it made it to the second series on that basis.
Oh, I know. I mean, 1987. Who'd have thought it was a world away? But never mind. Yeah. We're not going to get into that. But yeah, so I have one more episode then to see if you've seen, and then one more character. Okay. And the next episode on the list is the episode Alice from Voyager. Have you seen it? And if so, is it a hit or a miss?
Alice. I'm just trying to visualize which one that. Oh,
if I tell you
that's Tom Paris, isn't it? That's the one with Tom, isn't it?
It's basically Stephen King's Christine, it completely unashamedly, but in a sci-fi context. It makes no bones to disguise that fact.
That's the one with the shuttle, isn't it? It's the woman shuttle.
Yep.
Oh, man, that's been a while since I've seen that. I can't remember if I liked it or disliked it, but my God, that's a concept in itself. I want to say that sounds like an interesting thing because I do like Christine. I saw the movie fairly recently, but I don't remember enough of the episode to pass judgment on it. So I'm just going to assume it's probably crap. So,
in my opinion, your assumption is correct. It's a miss for me because, again, it doesn't really even tend to disguise what it is, and the way that it makes these things into sci-fi ideas just gets silly with the kind of the hologram of a woman that's talking to him and everything.
It's just a bit, It's just, it's no, you don't need to.
No, it's daft. I mean, it's good if you are looking for schlocky horror episodes of Star Trek, then I guess kind of hit on that regard.
And that's the thing, I can't really see Tom as a character gelling with a whole holographic seduction thing. He'd want a human. He's like Riker. He'd want a human.
Well, he's all about the ship.
Species.
Yeah. He's all about the ship, though. That's the point. Is that because he's got the love of hot rods and things. It's I love this ship. It's got me in the same way that Christine is the kind of shiny red hot rod car or whatever. And
yeah, but Tom, do you want to screw the ship? Do you want to screw the ship?
That's essentially what you. That's why I don't think it works for Star Trek because I mean the subtext in Christine is this guy would love to bang his car ultimately.
Oh my God! Yeah. Oh dear God.
But
Stephen King was an interesting chap.
Well, he took a lot of drugs in the 80s.
There you go. I mean, that explains that one bit of it.
Oh my word, no! I'm not touching that. Anyway, so the final thing on the hit or miss section for today then is. Again, talking about scary characters, is the character of Gul Dukat. Hit or miss?
Gul Dukat. Oh my goodness. That's the thing with Gul Dukat. I really like him, but they turned him into a villain near the very end when previously there were nuances to his character out there.
Oh. Okay,
But the thing is, he was never really. I'm thinking he was more of a rival nemesis type character in the beginning, but then he moved on to full on psycho villain near the end. Right. Okay. I preferred him more manipulative. I preferred him more when he was more like. It's difficult to describe, but I mean, he was always a god awful human being. But
Cardassian.
Why did I say that? Well, I think it was just because. Human being was just what generally follows.
Just a figure of speech,
figure of speech. Yeah. And then eventually you're like, but he was a god awful Cardassian being. But it was entertaining to watch. But by the end, he became unrelentingly unpleasant. I mean, when he killed Jadzia, that's the point of absolutely no return. And that of saying that about a character who has had so many points of no return previously off screen as well. When you take into account the character's past and with Kira and everything. he is. I want to say he's a fascinating villain. He's a fascinating way to write a villain, but he became a bit too on the nose evil villain after that. It's a complex villain. He's complex. I mean, it's just how unlikable do you want to make your villains when they're god-awful creatures, but with that sense of being like, but you can work with them to fulfill a goal.
Yeah.
But in the end, he became completely unworkable.
If I had to kind of spitball what you're sort of saying and what I think the show did, I think what happened is they introduced Wei-Un, who became what Dukat was in those first few seasons, the kind of charming, manipulative, evil, but for want of a better way to put it, not irredeemable, maybe, because there's still something there, and he's always like pleasantries, and it's all bubbling under the surface, even if it's not like out in the open. And when you've got Wei-Un doing that, having Dukat doing it as well would be kind of redundant. So that was when he kind of took the turn into absolute psychosis, as you say. But for me, that's when the character actually got better. I was more interested in him at that point. So like everything from when he kind of betrays Kira to join the Dominion, when everybody's expecting, because at that point he basically has been working towards almost a redemption arc, and it's kind of he's accepted Zial and the Cardassians of being the kind of the victims, I guess, in the war with the Klingons, and so it looked like it was heading one way, and then in that fantastic kind of two-parter toward the end of season 5, it's just that moment of you've misunderstood, Major. I'm not attacking the Dominion fleet. I'm joining them. It's just kind of oh wow, okay,
that's a poor boy.
Just beyond reproach. He really doesn't have any morals, and again, just all of my highlights of Dukat are from those last few years, because that moment at the end of Sacrifice of Angels when he realizes, or when he sees Zial killed, is devastating to me. That being the moment that broke him, I think makes perfect sense, and just it was so emotional I can barely talk about it. And then slightly later in that season, the episode Waltz, just a two-hander between Mark Alemo and Avery Brooks, both just doing the best acting of any kind of television. But again, because it's sci-fi, it won't get respected. But I just think that performance from the two of them, the way they both play it, Dukat's absolute madness and Sisko's absolute, like, I know you believe this, but you're a scumbag, you're a horrible person, and I'm not going to listen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that episode, so I could watch that anytime, just as a fantastic, it's almost like a play. But, but no, I would say overall, I can kind of see where you're coming from, because it did get silly when he started becoming possessed by power wraiths and having a cult to them, and that season 7 arc to me just didn't work at all when he was disguised as a Bajoran and they randomly decided to chuck him with the other big villain, so he was seducing Kai Wynn and stuff. But it was
I didn't.
No, it didn't work, did it?
Nah, not for me.
No, not for me either. But I would still say overall the character was a hit, because he was interesting enough for the majority. So you'd say the same.
He kept your interest.
Awesome. That's fair enough. Cool. So then that will end the spooky hit or miss section. And everyone, I hope you're having a happy Halloween and enjoy yourself. There, you will leave all of that Halloween festivities behind and jump into our review for this week. So we will begin our analysis of the episode Message in a Bottle. So just as I kind of have been doing the last few weeks, just to give a quick synopsis for anybody who's not that familiar, this episode basically sees Voyager enhancing their sensors, finding a sensor array, and realizing they can contact a Starfleet vessel that's on the outskirts of the Alpha Quadrant, but the only way they can reach them is to send the holographic Doctor through. So the Doctor arrives on the ship only to find it's been taken over by bloomin' Romulans. Isn't it always the way? Unfortunately,
typical, absolutely typical.
Typical. So he has to team up with the secondary Mark II EMH from that ship to retake the ship from Romulans and deliver the message to Starfleet that Voyager is still alive, well, but stranded in the Delta Quadrant. So, it gets through quite a lot in 45 minutes. With that in mind, do you have any kind of spoiler-free initial thoughts to our modern Message in a Bottle?
Well, I really love this one. I really, really enjoy it, because it feels like it's partially a comedy, but it's also
I don't think partially. I think it's fully a comedy.
True. With that dynamic between the two EMHs. It was very, very cool to see the Prometheus in action.
Oh, it was so cool.
But I mean, spoiler free, it's such a lovely episode, because it has a lovely warm ending, and the whole way through it's just feels, even though it's dealing with dark bits in the middle, it still feels a fairly light episode. It's just really nice to watch and enjoy.
I had a couple of sort of thoughts that I had about the episode. One that's entirely my own opinion, and one that I must admit that I read from someone else but fully agree with. And the first one that I got from watching this episode was, having seen all of it now, this episode struck me as very much, it's Lower Decks before Lower Decks was a thing, in that it's respectful of Star Trek, but it's absolute comedy from start to finish. I feel like this could easily be adjusted into an episode of Lower Decks, into like the half-hour kind of idea of, you know, one ship's doctor teaming up with another and they hate each other, but they've got that bickering. And related to that, the idea that I fully agree with but didn't come up with myself is, when I was reading about the episode, I saw that there was a lot of comparisons of the two doctors to Frasier and Niles from Frasier. When you hear that, I was like, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. It really is, isn't it?
Even in physical appearance, really.
Absolutely. That's the point. Yeah, fully. Because they're acting like that. And there was one moment in particular when, because I read that and took it in, and then just it went to the back of my mind. And as I was rewatching, and it skips a little bit ahead in the episode, but it's the moment when they're kind of trying to control the ship, and the Mark II's exasperately saying, oh, the Starfleet vessels are firing on us. They must think there's Romulans on board. And then the Mark I just, they're right!
Yeah.
I was like, that is full Frasier and Niles right there, isn't it? you can almost see it.
My goodness. I love that bickering near the end as well. It's just like, when I love the bit where the Mark II accidentally fires a torpedo at one of the Defiant class ships.
I love it because it's special effects plays the comedy of that moment so cool. Because to me, in my opinion, I don't know if this is true, it seems like they've slowed down the torpedo so that you can see its path just almost going like, ooh, oh no. You hit the wrong ship. Wasn't my fault. I love it. Yeah, that whole, I mean, everything with the two of them is so good. And just before I get into the kind of the chronological notes, there's a fantastic story I read about when they met each other, which I have to share in case anybody doesn't know it. Apologies if you're familiar with it, but obviously Robert Picardo and Andy Dick had to meet and kind of talk about their, what they were going to do in the episode. And apparently on their first meeting, or roughly around then, Andy Dick, who hadn't seen a lot of Star Trek but had sort of like Next Generation, apparently said to Robert Picardo, so surname Picardo, eh? Very similar to Captain Picard. Is that something that causes you any trouble or whatever? And apparently Robert Picardo, without missing a beat, just said, I'm getting heat from a guy whose last name is Dick.
Oh my God.
I just love that story.
That's incredible.
That just sums up that's the character dynamics, really, isn't it, as well? Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, also, gotta love that whole extra subroutines, especially considering the guy's last name is Dick. It's just like, can you download those subroutines into me? Or did I say, okay, Andy?
That's even better when you know, because again, I didn't until I looked it up, that that whole thing about sexual relations, and I've made modifications, that was from Robert Picardo. That wasn't in the script.
Oh my God.
It was him that put that forward, because he says there's a little bit of improvisation that they were allowed to go with, but the two things he contributed that he's proudest of is that runner about, like, I've even had sexual relations, which he discussed, and most importantly that he fully came up with was the exchange of stop breathing down my neck. My breathing's a simulation. So is my neck. Stop it anyway. That's all Robert Picardo.
That is genius.
Yeah, but apparently he's very proud of that. He mentions at conventions all the time that he came up with that idea, because I think that originally the line had been scripted about, like, stop breathing down my neck, and it was him that had said, well, they don't breathe. And then he kind of wrote the back and forth about it from there. So again, brilliant. You've got to love when someone's that in character and that funny with it as well.
Oh yeah, so, that shows real good knowledge of the character.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we normally go in chronological order. So just for the sake of it, I'll go through a few notes. And again, if there's anything you want to jump in, contribute, agree, disagree, or whatever, feel free. So we start the episode basically on Voyager, as you would expect. And there's a little bit of conflict, which is a little bit unusual for a Star Trek show. But this is, of course, still quite early in 7 of 9's sort of time on the ship. It's only middle of season 4. And she's rubbing B'Elanna up the wrong way. So B'Elanna's talking to Chakotay about, like, she's just so rude and I can't handle it and blah, blah, blah. Which was a little weird to me, but it's also probably my favorite of the sort of 2 or 3 B plots in the episode, because it goes somewhere when it actually seems to have a point. which I'm sure we'll get to later as we hit the scenes. But yeah, it was an interesting way to start. And I did make note of this as well, that I can remember that around this time Roxanne Dawson was pregnant, which you can tell because she randomly gets that engineering coat with tools in for no reason.
Big jacket. That big jacket.
Although it's great because they do actually let her use one of the tools once, and it's in this episode when she's reconfiguring the array or whatever on the bridge, and she actually has a purpose for it.
It's very effective, though. You never can tell that she's pregnant.
No, and apart from obviously the killing game, which they write into the plot, which again, quite genius, really, when you think. Yeah, awesome. So obviously we get to see the astrometrics lab, which at this point has been built and become the kind of one of the focal points of Voyager as it would be going forward. This is, again, a slight bugbear with me that the kind of cold open of the episode is deliberately kind of misleading because it just says, oh, look, I've enhanced the sensors and we've picked up a Starfleet vessel. And then it goes into the credits and I was like, there's a couple of important bits of information you're leaving out there, really, isn't there? It's not just like there's a vessel right down the street or whatever from us. So, But to be fair to them, they immediately do point out when they get back from the credits, oh, it's because I've found this.
There was a really nice detail, though, when they just said there's a Starfleet vessel. Before the opening credits kick in, they play a little snippet of the DS9 theme.
Do they? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cool.
I didn't notice, but that's cool.
Yeah, they do.
Awesome. Sweet. Oh, that's cool. I like that. I like Voyager's credits as well, because I just think...
they're beautiful.
That's not specific to this episode. But yeah, I do like that. Again, as I said, the whole point is they point out you couldn't have extended the sensors to the Alpha Quadrant, and they mention this relay, which will become important later. And again, kind of cool. And they do that fantastic thing which Star Trek and all good drama does, which is to put a clock on it, which is that they've got 16 minutes to get a message to them before they lose the opportunity. I don't know how. I don't care. It's just a ticking clock. I don't need to know the exact specifics, but it's kind of nice that at least it takes the time in the episode to show that they tried a message or whatever first, and it deflects back, and you get that bit of tension of like, oh, is it even going to work? What's going on? Yeah, which I like, and I do like the cleverness of the idea that, oh, well, a message would degrade, but a hologram won't if we send that through. Again, not sure it makes any logical sense. Don't really care.
Agreed.
But, yeah, it's a clever way to bring the Doctor into this, and as he points out, to give him another away mission, I guess, which is cool because he's one of the better characters in the show, really, isn't he?
Oh yeah, I love him. He's just so fun to watch every single time.
He really is. Yeah, I like it. This is really geeky, but it hadn't even occurred to me as a problem. But the episode solved it when B'Elanna says that she'll send an initiation code with the Doctor so that he'll actually activate. Because I was like, that would have been really awkward if you think about it. They sent him through to the Prometheus. Then it's like, well, we're going to wait for someone to turn him on.
Yeah.
But they did actually make a mistake at this point in the episode, which I hadn't noticed until I rewatched it. But when the Doctor's decompiling or whatever to get sent to the Prometheus, his mobile emitter disappears as well, which shouldn't really go with him.
Oh, yeah.
They obviously forgot he had it on him, on his like shoulder or whatever. And I was like, oh dear. Never mind. It doesn't ruin the episode. It's just
yeah, it's just one of those things.
Yeah. So
it's like that whole in Generations they forgot Picard's comm badge. That wasn't down to him not having the comm badge. They literally just forgot it.
Yeah. They do things like that all the time, and the many times that Janeway's comm badge is like randomly wonky or pointing in the wrong direction from scene to scene. Anyway, but no, so it's this point at the episode that we have to get into my baby, the USS Prometheus. Oh, she's so cool. I love her so much. We see her for the first time here, and I can just, if I may, just develop this into a little bit of a personal backstory, because I have to probably explain why it is that I love the Prometheus, and perhaps a little bit this episode, which is that I was very young. I was still in high school when this episode was about to air, and I remember that we never used to look up spoilers, but there was always like little preview hints and images that would appear before the episodes would air. And we would go on the internet at school and look up the Star Trek images, and they showed images of the Prometheus, and then the idea that it could split into 3. And the moment I saw the first images of it, I was like, that thing is gorgeous. I want this episode to air now because it's amazing. Yeah. So ever since then, I've kind of loved the Prometheus, and I have to say they do deliver in this episode. It does get a chance to shine, and you do see it from every possible angle, and they do show the, multi-vector assault mode at least twice. So, fair play to them. And
it's good worth. I mean, I really love the Prometheus design. I wish it was able to be used more.
Yeah, that's something someone mentions that in the audience interaction, which I'll bring up at the end. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of criminally underused when they have all the kind of assets, as they say, there to use it.
At the assets there, why didn't it appear in DS9?
Well, yeah, exactly.
They could have easily have done that. I mean, they put the Intrepid class in DS9, so there's no reason why they couldn't have just used.
Yeah, they could have used that Prometheus class for that, but yeah. Anyway, if anybody is curious, by the way, the only other times it appears are in Endgame, the Voyager finale. They're in the fleet escorting them. I'll just say that.
Oh, when everything's calmed down, there's no war anymore. Lovely.
Yeah, and randomly they appear in Enterprise in the when Archer is transported to the 26th century, and they mention he arrives on the Enterprise J, and they mention that the sphere builders are having a conflict with the Federation, and because they presumably just had the ability to use these assets, there's the USS Dauntless and the USS Prometheus are fighting outside the window. And because of HD kind of Blu-rays and things now, you can see that's what they are, which means the Prometheus class is so good that it's still in service 300 years later.
I mean, they kept the Excelsior, so...
Very true, actually. Yeah. So, yeah, but I just love the exterior of the Prometheus is cool enough, but then inside, how cool is the little swishy sick bay and all of the interior sets and the bridge and everything? It actually looks new and shiny and cool.
It's all very cream.
Yes. Well, cream and beige.
Yeah, cream and beige. It's kind of riffing on the Galaxy class Enterprise D bridge.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, because I think that's the point, is that because that's kind of so homely and cool, and we didn't really have that from DS9 and Voyager, so it was kind of perhaps that's another reason that I kind of like it. But yeah, again, this is a really geeky spot and has nothing to do with anything. But the Prometheus bizarrely has 2 registration numbers because there was a slight miscommunication between departments. So you can see on the physical model or the CGI model every time it appears that the registry is clearly NX59650, but it's also visible on the dedication plaque that you see on the bridge on a few scenes that it's actually NX749 something or other.
Oh my goodness. There we go. We have Starfleet's first typo.
So because the art dressing department didn't speak to the visual effects department, so they ended up with 2. But the generally considered truth is the one that's painted on the whole, as it appears more frequently and is seen more often. And if anybody does care for an actual explanation in canon, there is one. They actually went back and said, look, it was an initial idea that they re-updated or something, and then the numbers, they ended up keeping the one from the original kind of, it's a whole thing. Look it up if you're interested. But essentially in real world terms, they just didn't talk to each other.
I don't think that would happen nowadays. But,
no.
But cool. Yeah, that's a learning experience for them.
Yeah, definitely. So that might be why, by the way, if you're looking up the Prometheus on the internet, you will often find 2 completely different registries. They're both the same ship. Just that's why. But yeah. So the Doctor, when he arrives kind of on the sick bay, you get the shock moment of kind of spotting the dead crew, which is pretty shocking for us as the audience, but is kind of overshadowed for me because I was just like, oh, cool, they're in the new uniforms.
Yeah, that's the thing. I believe, isn't this the first time that the DS9 uniforms, movie uniforms appeared in Voyager?
It is, because obviously there would be no reason why.
Yeah, this would be the first time, yeah. I mean, I know when Barclay had his sort of appearance, he was wearing a Voyager DS9 uniform, early DS9, but that was after they were introduced, the new ones.
No, but the Barclay appearance that you're talking about, projections, probably in season 1.
Season 2, 96.
Season 2, yeah, is him in the DS9 uniform, maybe.
Yeah, it's him in the Voyager specific uniform.
Yeah, the Voyager.
I kind of think of the coloured shoulders. I know it's the DS9 early, but it feels more linked to Voyager for me.
Well, yeah, because Voyager use it throughout all 7 years. Really, I suppose that's fair. But no, Barclay does appear with the grey kind of movie DS9 uniform in like season 6 and 7 as well. So
yeah, and later on. But no, in projections he was in the yellow. He was in the Voyager, normal Voyager. I hate this.
Yeah, but no, it's kind of a nice touch. I like that they actually had the continuity to realize that in the Alpha Quadrant they would have these new uniforms. But I remember, this is again really geeky at the time, me and a friend of mine were disappointed that Voyager didn't update to those uniforms when they knew about them, because I was like, well, now they should replicate new uniforms, damn it. That's
the thing. I was wondering why Starfleet never sent a code just to give them the uniforms, new uniforms, so they could feel up to scratch. It's still part of the team.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's not a huge deal, but
Yeah, not really. I mean, it gives Voyager its own distinct visual identity still, so compared to DS9. So, which was
also,
wearing those.
I believe to this date, Voyager might be the only show that hasn't changed the uniforms at any point in its whole run.
Wow, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think so. Although Dex, I don't think has, but that's animated and it's still only 2 years in yet. So,
I mean, TOS had those like those first uniforms at the start.
They were just jumpers.
Yeah, they're just jumpers, basically. Yeah,
yeah. But yeah, that's fair enough. It was nice, but kind of bittersweet as always to hear Majel Barrett's voice as the computer of the Prometheus when the Doctor was talking to it. But yeah, I like that they kind of they deal with exposition and get it out the way through dialogue rather than just dumping it all on you, because it makes sense with the Doctor asking what's happened and what's going on, why are there Romulans? There's 27 Romulans aboard, and you get the full specifications of the Prometheus and the first mention of Chekhov's multi-vector assault mode, which the Doctor hears the name of, but when he asks what it is, gets told, you're not allowed to know, no full clearance required. So it's setting that up, I think, nicely for the audience. It's a bit of a tease. But
100%.
It's not long after that, though, that you see a Nebula-class ship attacking them, and we are shown the multi-vector assault mode. The Romulans activate it. And it's so cool when it happens, isn't it?
It's like a source of separation on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. But just the fact that all 3 parts become their own little individual warships, and they've all got weapons, and they've all got nacelles, including the one little pointy one at the top for the triangular part. So yeah, I love it a bit. The one sort of thing that bugs me is that it never really makes clear what happened to that Nebula class ship. You just see them firing at the back of it.
I was wondering that. I saw an explosion. I was just like, I hope that ain't a warp core breach, because otherwise,
Yeah, they do. I think the dialogue says the vessel's been disabled. So I was like, does that mean you've destroyed it, or have you just left it drifting in space?
I think it's just drifting, yeah. I think it just collapsed the warp field and it just...
That's fair enough. It was nice to see a Nebula-class ship in Voyager again, though, because something we wouldn't really otherwise have seen. We haven't seen any Starship ships up to this point, so that was cool. Yeah, and I do like the kind of the smoothness of the writing, that obviously there's a Federation ship that attacks them. That causes a Romulan on the bridge to get sort of plasma burns or whatever, which causes him to have to go to sickbay, which is naturally where the Doctor is. So I was like, okay, this is really clever. I like this. Everything's happening for a reason, I guess. So it struck me that the script was very sort of tight, free-flowing and tight like that. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I like that everybody in the episode tends to ask all the right questions that the audience might be asking, even if it wasn't immediately apparent to me. So the Romulans, when they activate, they think they activate, but he's already there, the EMH Mark 1, actually ask, well, why should we trust you? You're a Starfleet program and everything. And I was like, we don't really need this scene, but it's nice in case anybody's questioning why the Romulans would be so stupid that they actually do at least address it. So yeah. And then, of course, this is when the Doctor activates the EMH, and it's not the same. It's a Mark II. It's Andy Dick.
Andy Dick.
Yeah, this is the immediate start of their fantastic antagonism and their bickering. I just love the way that he matter-of-factly points out, you're the Mark I. You're the inferior EMH. Beady eyes, terrible bedside manner. And,
straight up in his face, and already telling him why he's bad.
Exactly, yeah. So you can already kind of feel the tension, the kind of grumpy old manism between these two. And again, I'm probably just going to be mentioning a lot of things that I think are brilliantly funny and work. But I love the fact that our Doctor fills in Mark II about, like, there's Romulans on board, this is what's happened, and lets go of his mouth because he's stopped him from sort of shouting or whatever, and then he just goes, computer deactivate. And then he deactivates himself, and then the Doctor reactivates him, and he's like, no, Starfleet regulations say that if we've been taken by a hostile force, I'm to deactivate and wait to be rescued. I was like, there's something brilliant about the idea of that, and then our EMH has to be like, no, I'm going to force you into this. You've got to, there's 2 ships at stake and everything, and it gives you a fantastic chance for one of the Dr. McCoy-isms to get a reference there.
Yes,
with, I'm a doctor, not a commando, which I love. So yeah, anytime I'm a doctor, not something comes up, it's a shout out to D. Kelly and Dr. McCoy for that one.
That was stellar.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah, they just work really well together. And again, I like that the dialogue and everything makes it clear that things are not going to be smooth because the Prometheus herself and the Mark II EMH are both experimental prototypes. So it kind of raises the stakes of like, even his matrix is unstable. And it also gives you the kind of Star Trek-y idea that they're having to overcome limitations to sort of retake the ship. It's not just going to be a simple matter of, okay, we'll do this and that and whatever. And again, this is just me fawning over the performance. But when Andy Dick is kind of wandering around the sickbay and he starts leaning over the Romulan, and he's clearly nervous or whatever, and then the doctor touches him on the shoulder when he does that little jump in fear.
It's those little details that really make that difference between those programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's such a little detail, but I'd laugh at it every single time. It's so ridiculous and so funny. But and I do like, though, that at least they point out that the doctor has to still doesn't have to, but treats the Romulan because, Hippocratic oath, and he wouldn't just let him be hurt. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it's also cool that the EMH gives a little mission history, and that's what motivates the Mark II and everything. But then you also get the fantastic moment of him not being familiar with the kind of newer medical science, and like, pick up the thing. That one, it's the cone-shaped device. We don't use scalpels or leeches anymore. So
it's like, I mean, how far has it come in? What, only 4 years?
Apparently, quite far.
Yeah. So like, oh right, bloody hell.
Yeah, I think the point in that, though, that I really enjoy is that it's basically there's a shifting upper hand when they're bickering throughout the episode, because obviously the scene starts with like the Mark II being cowardly and not wanting anything to do with it, and then it shifts immediately to like, look, I'll handle the medical side of things because you're inferior, So there's never anyone that's like above the other at any point, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, so anyway, we move back to Voyager briefly, and there's our first reference to Letters Home, which I like because I always forget this is here, and it sets up the next episode that we won't be talking about, but I think it's a brilliant little hint and a little tease about what's coming. And again, a nice little joke when Chakotay says to Jane, yes, you probably shouldn't get your hopes up, but I'll admit it, I've started writing a letter to my cousin, sort of thing. And yeah.
My goodness.
What's less successful for me is the subplot of Tom Paris, who's now obviously left in charge of sickbay, and the idea that
making a new doctor.
They've got to make a new EMH and they're not able to. And I do find it amusing that Neelix is trying to kind of have marketable skills for the Alpha Quadrant and ended up, giving everyone severe heartburn by giving them chili. And there's something that I've always remembered and always found hilarious about the line. Maybe next time a little less jalapenos.
Jalapenos, yeah. I picked up on that when I was rewatching. I was just like, that's good detail, because there's no way in hell he would know how to pronounce that just reading it.
Yeah. Star Trek aliens wouldn't. They would just read it and be like, what? Jalapeno? Okay.
Jalapeno? Okay, computer, replicate a jalapeno.
Yeah, and I like that, but that seems random, but it keeps the idea of the kind of hope of reaching the Alpha Quadrant alive. But then, like you said, it gets kind of silly with the whole idea of we have to try to make a new AMH, and that scene, for me, it just kind of slows down the episode. And somebody points out in the Memory Alpha review that it's proven wrong anyway, because the next season they create a fully working Cardassian medical hologram with absolutely no problem whatsoever. So it's like, oh dear, never mind.
Harry, you just had a bad day.
Exactly. Yeah. There's not really much to say about the next scenes except that I love the comedy back and forth. So the Prometheus, they say it's faster than anything, and they can't really, they're heading towards Romulan space. They're going to have to do everything. But it's pointed out that there's hollow emitters on every deck on the Prometheus. So, which is a handy explanation for how exactly they're able to retake the ship, because again, it would be hard to do from sickbay or a holodeck. But it does make me wonder if all like advanced Starfleet ships now have hollow emitters on every deck.
I mean, quite possibly, I'd say, if the Prometheus being so experimental is unique in that regard, it's just a nice coincidence. It's very possible. When you think in Picard, they have holograms for every system. They have like an engineering and a hospitality and everything. So probably there's every ship now is just holographically equipped. But it's a cool idea. Even if it's going to lead to eventually the measure of a man for holograms of like, well, how much do they have independent thought and everything? And there's a good episode there, I'm sure, somewhere. Yeah.
I like the Doctor's plan to kind of release the nerve gas to knock out the Romulans, because it's a cool way to use actual doctory skills, but do the commando job that they've got to set out to do. And as I said, we've mentioned this already, but the idea of the Doctor growing beyond his programming and even having sexual relations and, the Mark IIs, well, maybe you could download those subroutines into me.
Yeah, there we are.
Hilarious, and Picardo's idea, so kudos.
Oh, very good. Very good idea.
Very good. And again, talking about the brilliant moments of like physical comedy, when he gets given the canisters of gas, the Mark II, and gets pointed towards the Jeffries tube, and he's not sure how to crawl in. He tries like walking in backwards and whatever.
Backwards.
then he tries crawling the right way, but he forgets to take the canisters with him and everything.
Oh God, bless.
It's so amusing. It's ridiculous, but it's just funny and it's charming and cool. And again, continuing the comedy thing, the EMH Mark 1, of course, then goes to the bridge and he's trying to kind of get access to the sensors. So he tries to sort of talk the Romulans through with, there might be a nasty strain of this virus. Well, we're all not feeling unwell. Oh, well, we can just leave it then. But, some say that the cramps are unbearable. Some people say the rash is worse. And that convinces the Romulans to all conduct your scans. Whatever this is. It's brilliant use of actual medical stuff to do his thing, even if it does immediately get caught anyway. So, just over the top kind of comedy, but then, shocking. We're handing the ship to the Tal Shiar and the Doctor's been caught, which gives you the whole sort of cliffhanger of like, things have been funny, but now we're in deep doo-doo,
Yeah.
God
almighty.
The next bit that I wanted to talk about, because it's the subplot that I think is more successful, I mentioned, is we then cut to kind of Torres and 7 of 9 in the lab, and they're continuing their conflict, and Torres is saying, you're too rude. We can't have it and everything. And it's nice that it furthers their characters and their relationship. But the reason I like this subplot is because it introduces the Hirogen for the first time.
Oh yeah, of course. This is their big moment to begin, and that's kind of like, well done. You've irritated them now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, this is one of the things that when this episode first aired, we'd started to hear rumblings of what I thought was the Hirogen, because that's the way it's spelt, by the way. So we felt like fools when the episode finally aired, because my friend and I had been walking around for about 4 months saying, I can't wait till the Hirogen arc comes on.
Hirogen.
But so it was really cool to see this and to know that there was an arc coming with these bad guys, and they're immediately kind of cool and intimidating and like, what are you? You're using our array, terminate your link, and not having any guff from them,
Just literally, no, stop this now. You're using my bandwidth.
You're on the Hirogen Wi-Fi.
Get off.
Nice. But yeah, and I do like that talking about like 7 and Torres having that conflict. The way that it's resolved is ultimately that Torres comes to a grudging respect because 7 has the sense to think he's not going to listen, so she just shocks the Hirogen.
Yeah. I mean,
great. It's just great, the dual response of Janeway just going, "What have you done?" looking exasperated, and Torres being like, "Oh, nice." Very funny again.
Absolutely.
I like the kind of interrogation of the Doctor by the Romulans, because he stays kind of stalwart and he's never like afraid. The Mark 1, and he's even answering back and being kind of cocky towards the Romulans as they keep insisting that you couldn't have done this on your own. And it's nice again that the script gives a cool explanation for how Mark 2 was able to, as he says, improvise and open the filters and release the gas without the Doctor's help and whatever else. But again, not really necessary, but it's good that it's there, I guess. And again, triumph of dialogue. This is one of the things that there's certain lines of dialogue from TV you watch when you're younger that stick in your head for whatever reason. And for me, this is one of them. You really should keep a personal log. Why bore others needlessly has been randomly.
Which is ironic considering the Doctor loves bragging.
He loves to talk. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, absolutely. And this is a triumph of direction for me, but I just love that they're having a conversation as they transfer to the bridge. They don't even interrupt the conversation. It just keeps flowing.
Yeah.
Which
keeps on going.
You wouldn't think about it, but it's like, it's so brilliant. And there's a slight jarring thing that you can kind of tell it obviously wasn't filmed at the same time, but I think the effect really works. It's cool. By this point, you've got no one left on board apart from the 2 holograms to control the ship, and they're 8 minutes from the border. So again, you get this like, oh dear, it was scary. We're in trouble here. But that's when you get the improvisation I mentioned about the breathing down my neck stuff from Robert Picardo, and they're trying to kind of stop the ship. And this scene really was weird for me, except I presume the only reason it's there is to build up the kind of comedy of like what do they call it? The rule of 3, that 3 things is funnier. So they stop the ship, but then accidentally cause a warp core breach, but then they've solved that problem. But then, the ships are incoming and they're Romulan warbirds. And I was like, oh my word, this is exhausting. That's one thing, it's another,
Put him through an absolute gauntlet.
Absolutely. And so then we get to the conclusion of the episode anyway, which is effectively a really big battle, which I love because it seems to me like they put money into it. It looks really cool. So obviously you've got 3 Romulan warbirds, you've got 2 Defiant class ships and 1 Akira class, and you've got the Prometheus. And yeah, the scene starts to me with a scene that's very much like a rip-off of Han Solo's Star Wars moment, where it's the Romulans trying to talk to the Doctor, and the Doctor doing his best to be like, yes, don't worry, don't come on board, our view screen is broken, we've had trouble, and oh, no, immediately we'll drop our shields, and then it just takes him nowhere whatsoever. And again, hilarious comedy moment when he tells Andy Dick to raise the shield and he's ducked underneath the front console and he just thinks he's gone.
Oh, it's genius.
It's brilliant. And
It
as I said, this dynamic is just great. But and I love that it's comedy that saves the day in the end as well, because it's when things are the most tense and, Starfleet are firing on them, so are the Romulans, and the Mark II just gives his soliloquy about, oh, that's it, my life cut short, no time to smell the roses, no time for sex, and leans on the front console and activates the multi-factor assault by pure accident.
He saved their souls by just being stupid.
By being horny, essentially, as he's lamenting not being able to have sex, and then like, oh, I've pressed something. And I just love the way that they're both in unison as the computer's like, multi-vector assault mode activated, specify target, and they both in unison just go, Romulans! Exactly. It's brilliant. And as things are kind of settling down and they've won the day, I just love the victory speech and the kind of the fact that they found mutual respect. And then the DS9 commandos beam in, of course.
Yeah.
Which I did read about that this is a couple of extras who are actually from DS9 because they had the uniforms, so why not?
Oh, okay. So just like, come on, get in.
Yeah, so you'll probably have spied them in the background of a few DS9 shots, but because they had uniforms and they were already fitted and everything, they were like, oh, yeah, 1 day's work over on the Voyager sets, just beaming in with a phaser rifle.
One shot, really. It was 2 shots.
Literally, yeah. If that, absolutely. But again, this is a very, very slight niggle, and it shows how geeky I am. But as one of the jokes earlier on, they're talking about how the systems, they need to sort of get power from other systems. And the EMH Mark II kind of says, well, I'm taking power from life support. We don't need that. And then 2 humans beam in, and they're perfectly fine.
It'd be funny if they beamed in, they just started choking and immediately beamed out again.
Exactly.
Computer, go to defiance, I can't breathe. Or whatever the name is.
Beam us back. Yeah. But I've got to talk about the conclusion because it's always very emotional, and I remember it really got me at the time because there's something beautiful about the kind of the Doctor arriving back and then just the touching. I told Starfleet that that we're not gone, we're just lost in this Delta Quadrant, and they said they passed on a message to tell you that they're going to do everything in their power, and they wanted you to know that you're no longer alone. And I just think Kate Mulgrew's performance of that one line at the end, just saying, 60,000 light years feels a little bit closer today. It's so emotional and so powerful. So
it is beautiful. That ending is honestly a fantastic moment. And it signifies there's difference in the status quo going forward, because then there's actually a sign of hope. It's progression.
Yes, exactly. And again, this was the start of this kind of ongoing arc where they're dealing with the communications HoM in the next episode, but you're also ramping up the Hirogen arc for their kind of 4 or 5 episodes, whatever it is that they're in. Excuse me. So it's a good little period in Voyager for me that I remember being quite excited about and quite liking. And in a way, it's kind of a microcosm of the way things are done in TV now, where it's no standalone episodes. Everything's an ongoing kind of narrative in that way. So
serialized.
It's cool. Serialized, that was the word. Yeah. So awesome. Well, what I'll do then now, I'll take us to my very next section, which is a section that I call Gene's Vision, which I have input as a kind of FU basically to the people that say that, like, oh, some Star Trek just doesn't have Gene's Vision, because for me, it's always there if you want to look for it and find it. So I always tend to list a few things that I think would be representative of the ideology of Trek and of Gene's Vision. And I always ask my guest first. So do you think there's anything that you would perhaps notably say in this episode fits into that ideology, Dom?
Well, I guess the synthetic, the hologram life forms coming together despite their differences to resolve the problem, I would say, is very much integral to that vision. Yeah, because that is ultimately, it is a union between them. Yeah, and I guess you could also say the same thing between Torres and Seven as well. Yeah, completely, absolutely. Yeah. Essentially, always about that, isn't it? Resolving differences, coming together, and growing. I think growth is key as well. The growing beyond your programming in this case, or growing as a person. And obviously there's the idea of the ships kind of longing for home, that being key, and that ending kind of, echoing that.
and really exemplifying that, I think, is perfect. I think it's quite a kind of Star Trek Vision idea that it's not afraid of comedy and lightness. Because for me, that's part of the legacy of Star Trek, right back to like the Trouble with Tribbles. That's there's always been comedy episodes, so it's cool. And on a real world level, I did note that this episode surprisingly is both co-written and directed by women, which was an interesting fact to learn. Yeah. So yeah, the writer Lisa Klink, who co-wrote it with someone else, I forget, some guy, and the director whose name I can't recall and feel terrible about because she sadly passed away now. But fantastic job directing, I had to say, because I thought, before I even looked it up, I thought the direction of this episode was astounding, and I just think it's noteworthy that. So yeah, in that case, I will move us to the very end then, which is the conclusion and score out of 5 Starfleet Deltas. And again, I always defer to my guest first. So, Dominic, do you have a conclusion about this episode and your score out of 5?
I'd say it. I'd give it a solid 5, to be honest. Can't really find many faults about it at all. And it's just a marvelously enjoyable episode that just makes you feel warm on the inside.
That's fair enough. It is. It's a comfort episode, isn't it? Very much. But okay. Well, I've ended up with a massively long conclusion, so do bear with me. I so apologize for this, but I started writing and couldn't stop. But yeah, I just said it's an episode that I remember vividly anticipating, then watching and loving when it first aired. As a huge nerd, I was excited to see this new starship and the new rumored triple separation. And boy, that geek stuff and everything just doesn't disappoint. It's always good and still is to spend time with Voyager's family of characters, because that's what they were, and that's part of the reason why that show particularly appeals to me. I'd kind of come to sort of know that and to like these guys. What I didn't expect and still love was a glorious little screwball comedy inside of a serious and not diminished Star Trek framework. As I've mentioned, I think in a lot of ways, the main plot of this episode is doing Lower Decks before Lower Decks exists. But the performances are the key, chiefly from Picardo and Dick, but the script also is surprisingly tight and effective, really impressed me the more I analysed it, and the direction of everything from physical comedy to special effects is pitch perfect. The episode for me, though, does have flaws that are worth mentioning, which is at least one of the subplots is unnecessary, with the sense that there's a lot of padding for time on Voyager to keep the main cast involved and to not have to write the A story very much longer. But that's a nitpick in an episode that also unknowingly got me hyped as the teasing of one of my favourite arcs via the introduction of the Hirogen. The dialogue, characters, aliens, and ships from this 45-minute episode have all become rightly iconic. But what's to come for me would be even better. And I would say 4.5 Starfleet Deltas out of 5, which obviously would work out as an average to 4.75 out of 5 overall for Message in a Bottle, which is not bad. Very, very good score for a good episode, I would say.
That is stellar, I would say. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just one more bit of business then, and that's to deal with the audience interaction. As usual, I put out on social media a question about what are your thoughts on the episode Message in a Bottle. And I did get a handful of responses today, so I'll just go through those. It shouldn't take very much longer. So this is the section that I call Subspace Communications, basically audience interaction. So yeah, I asked, what did you think of Message in a Bottle? And I got a response from Rob Olson on Twitter, who just says it's a great episode. From Philippa at Pippa19873315. I loved this one. I cried with laughter. Okay. At Theron Couch says, can't stand it. What should have been a huge deal reporting that Voyager is around but lost in the Delta Quadrant happens off screen. Instead, we get this weird, occasionally comedic action outing, and the Romulans stealing the Prometheus is kind of weird continuity-wise. Okay, I included this because it's kind of nice to get the dissenting view, but I don't agree necessarily with any of that. Which
neither do I.
Yeah, I don't think that's understood the episode fully, but fair enough. At Johnny Miskatonic just says it was fun and a little smiley face. And finally, at Jock Glasgow says totally loved it, although it felt like Chekhov's gun was never quite fulfilled. I expected to see this kick-ass ship come into play later or in a spin-off show, which is weird because that's exactly what you said, Dom, as well. Yeah, it's true. The Prometheus was criminally underused, and yeah, Bibby and Picard, if anybody's listening from there who happens to be to have that kind of power. Yeah. But no, it would be nice to see the Prometheus again somewhere. It's really cool, and I'm proud to say I have the little Eagle Moth model of it in pride of place. Although it doesn't split into 3, which is a shame.
Oh,
yeah, maybe they could make a lot of money by making that.
Make one that does do a Multivector Assault mode. I mean, exactly. I'm pretty sure they can do one that does a standard galaxy source separation. So
So that'll wrap us up for today. As I said, everybody enjoy Doctor Who tonight as you're listening, and enjoy. I hope you've had a safe and a pleasant Halloween. Dom, thank you so much for joining me in Talking Trek. I could have been here for hours quite happily, and we'll have to do it again sometime, and I'm always up for Talking Trek. But just before we go, did you have any social media or other project information you wanted to pass on?
Of course. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. You've been a marvelous host.
Oh, thank you so much.
And in terms of my socials and everything, well, you can follow me on Twitter at Dominic JGM. You can follow me on Instagram at DominicsandTime. And feel free to also follow the DW2012 Twitter account or Dynamic Works 2012 account on Instagram for updates on my latest project, which is the Purple Doctor in the Doctor Who fan film under that channel. So yeah, that is what I have coming up immediately, and yeah.
Awesome, that's great. I will leave all the links in the description as well, but do follow Dom. He's a great follow on Twitter and everything, and his as I say, fan works and things are fantastic. So if you're unfamiliar, then consider this a good plug from me as well. So that's great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. And enjoy Comic-Con this weekend, and hopefully you'll have a great time, and get lots of photos for you to share on social media for us to fawn over. And
yes, hopefully. Do my best.
Awesome. You can find me at Iron Mike Wilson on Twitter, and the podcast, of course, is at HOM Trek or HoM Trek. Just think of Mr. HoM,
Mr. HoM.
The Waxana Troy's little manservant. And other than that, I will be back next week. There's a couple of episodes left in this series before I'll be taking a little bit of a break, consisting of one 2-parter and one movie. And next week, we will be reviewing the 2-part episode, the pilot, actually, of Enterprise, Broken Bow, parts 1 and 2. So do join me for that. And in the meantime, remember, we are Starfleet. Live long and prosper.